The Concordat mothership materialized over Manhattan at precisely 900 EST, its silver-blue hull refracting sunlight into mesmerizing patterns across the city skyline. Air traffic control systems worldwide crashed simultaneously. Global markets followed minutes later. By noon, military satellites had gone blind, and Earth's nuclear arsenal stood frozen in its silos. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the UN Security Council dissolve into panic from the back of the chamber. Unlike her colleagues, her heartbeat remained steady. 20 years in military intelligence had prepared her for this moment. Humanity's first overt extraterrestrial contact. "Patch me through to Geneva," she whispered into her wristband. "Activate Protocol Omega." The overseers made their entrance with calculated theatrical flair. 3 crystalline beings, each nearly 3 meters tall, materialized on the assembly floor. Their translucent bodies pulsed with internal light that shifted between sapphire and violet. Where eyes should have been, only swirling vortices of energy existed. "We are the Galactic Concordat," the central figure announced, its thoughts translated directly into 17 human languages simultaneously. "A federation of civilized species that has governed this sector for 30,000 years. Sarah noted the precise way they arranged themselves, a triangle formation optimized for telepathic amplification. Their presentation was designed to overwhelm, to establish dominance without resistance. "You have achieved so little with so much," the lead overseer continued, gesturing dismissively at the human representatives. "A resource-rich world, yet you've barely mastered rudimentary atomic energy. Your species remains fractured by primitive tribal instincts." Behind her diplomat's mask, Sarah fought back a smile. "Let them underestimate us." The overseer's proposal was predictably condescending. Earth would receive protectorate status, effectively becoming a cosmic wildlife preserve. Humanity would gain limited access to Concordat medical technology and cultural exchange. In return, Earth would provide biological specimens and allow a research outpost on the moon. The alternative, the overseer added with practiced nonchalance, is isolation. "We control the hyperlanes. Should you decline our generous offer, no human vessel will ever leave this solar system." The Security Council erupted in outrage, exactly as the aliens expected. Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with practiced authority. "The people of Earth are honored by your attention," she said, executing a bow calculated to appear both respectful and slightly awkward. "We gratefully accept protectorate status while we learn the ways of our galactic neighbors." The lead overseer's energy field flickered with surprise. They had anticipated hours of human bickering. "A wise decision." It recovered smoothly. "We will assign an attaché to study your adaptation." Zarvex, a junior anthropologist who had lobbied for this assignment for purely career-advancing reasons, stepped forward. His slender form was less imposing than the overseer's, his energy patterns softer. "I will document your species' introduction to galactic society," he stated, already mentally drafting the unremarkable dissertation this would surely produce. That night, as the Concordat delegation returned to their vessel, Sarah Chen entered a nondescript warehouse in Nevada. Inside, 50 of Earth's brightest minds had already disassembled the goodwill gifts left by the aliens. "Report," she commanded. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from a disassembled communication node, his eyes gleaming. "It's exactly as we predicted from the signals we intercepted decades ago. Their technology is advanced but predictable. No real innovation for at least 3,000 years." Sarah nodded. "And the back door?" "Already coded. When they activate their moon base, we'll have access to their entire network." In his quarters aboard the mothership, Zarvex reviewed his first formal observation. "These humans simulate deference perfectly, almost as if they've practiced for centuries. Their hierarchical response suggests minimal resistance to Concordat integration." He couldn't have been more wrong. The Concordat's Museum of Progress gleamed on the lunar surface, its pearlescent domes catching Earth's reflection. Inside, holographic displays showcase technologies meant to humble humanity, each exhibit carefully labeled with the millennia required for its development. Dr. Eleanor Chen adjusted her standard issue observer badge, suppressing a smile as she recalled her mother's instructions. Look impressed, look grateful, but never look too intelligent. As the ambassador's daughter and Earth's foremost quantum physicist, Eleanor led a team of student observers. In reality, the planet's most brilliant engineers, each chosen for their ability to memorize complex systems at a glance. Elder scientist Crowleth, a centipede-like being with 14 manipulator limbs, activated the quantum stabilizer demonstration with obvious pride. This technology required 8 centuries to perfect, he announced through his translator. The principles will likely be beyond your comprehension, but perhaps your great-grandchildren might grasp the rudimentary concepts. Eleanor watched the stabilizer's energy matrix fluctuate, immediately recognizing the phase and consistency. She theorized a similar solution in her doctoral thesis 5 years ago. Fascinating, she murmured, then added innocently, but have you considered phase-locking the tertiary matrix? The oscillation variance seems inefficient. Silence fell. Crowleth's antenna froze mid-wave. The crystalline artifact he'd been holding slipped from his grasp, shattering on the polished floor. That would be impossible, he finally stammered. The calculation complexity alone would require. Just a thought, Eleanor shrugged, already moving to the next exhibit. Behind her, Concordat scientists huddled, chittering in their native tongues as they reassessed human cognitive capabilities. That evening, in the habitat module allocated to human visitors, Zarvex reviewed the surveillance footage with growing unease. The humans were discussing alien technologies with a familiarity that defied explanation. Their terminology was different but functionally equivalent to Concordat scientific language. Their development curves don't make sense, he reported to his superior. They're making connections that took us generations, within hours of exposure. The response was dismissive. They're mimicking without understanding, like avian species that reproduce sounds without comprehension. Zarvex wasn't convinced. He'd been reviewing Earth's scientific archives, primitive by Concordat standards, but strangely innovative in approach. Humans seem to thrive on inefficient methods, taking creative leaps rather than following established protocols. His musings were interrupted by alarms. A massive solar flare, unexpected and unprecedented, had overwhelmed the base's primary shields. Secondary systems were failing. The habitat module had 18 minutes of life support remaining. Evacuate priority personnel, came the overseer's order. Concordat citizens first. In the chaos that followed, Zarvex found himself in the engineering core alongside Eleanor and her team. Rather than panicking, they were methodically disassembling their primitive shuttle's propulsion system. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Saving everyone." Eleanor replied without looking up. "Your shields operate on inverse polarization principles. Our fusion cells can be reconfigured to reinforce the failing grid if we reverse the polarity and channel it through your distribution network." "That's not possible," Zarvex objected. "The compatibility is perfect if we use superconducting interface material," finished engineer Rajiv Singh, already splicing alien circuitry into human components with impossible precision, which we just created by flash freezing our coolant reserves. 39 minutes later, as the emergency shield stabilized and evacuation ships docked, Zarvex watched the humans working alongside Concordat engineers. What struck him wasn't just their technical improvisation, but something more fundamental. While Concordat personnel had rushed to save themselves, the humans had instinctively organized to protect everyone, alien and human alike. "Why risk yourselves for us?" he asked Eleanor as the crisis subsided. She looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Because we could help. Why wouldn't we?" In his private log that night, Zarvex added a troubling observation. Humans don't just adapt technology faster than any known species. They possess a cooperative instinct that defies the universal principles of self-preservation. This combination makes them unpredictable. The overseers would not be pleased with his report, but for the first time in his 300-year career, Zarvex was beginning to question whether the Concordat's understanding of the universe was as complete as they believed. The Vexnar attack came without warning. Their blade-shaped warships, obsidian against the stars, sliced through the Concordat's ceremonial defense line at Proxima Centauri within hours. Thousands of years of peace had left the once mighty Concordat fleet ceremonial rather than functional, their weapons systems optimized for parade formations, not combat. In the Overseer emergency chamber, holographic displays flashed crimson as system after system reported Vexnar incursion. "Impossible," whispered the Prime Overseer, crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "The containment protocols have held for 3,000 years. They've evolved," reported the defense coordinator. "These aren't the Vexnar we pacified. Their bioweapons signature has mutated. They're using radiation-based targeting systems we've never encountered." As the chamber erupted in debate about proper diplomatic responses, a junior communications officer interrupted, something unheard of in Concordat hierarchy. "Earth has gone silent," he reported. "All transmission channels have ceased." The Prime Overseer's energy field dimmed momentarily. The humans cower in terror. As expected, their primitive psychology cannot process interstellar conflict. 3 minutes later, every communication screen in the chamber activated simultaneously, displaying a dark-skinned human female in a uniform no Concordat analyst recognized. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Fleet. We stand ready to assist the Concordat against Vexnar aggression." Silence fell as 17 ships appeared on tactical displays, emerging from Earth's asteroid belt. Their configurations were unlike anything in Concordat records. Civilian vessels retrofitted with makeshift weapons systems, sensor arrays bolted to mining platforms, fusion drives modified beyond their design parameters. The Vexnar commander, a silicon-based entity whose consciousness was distributed across crystalline nodes, directed a minor strike force to eliminate this nuisance. The largest Vexnar destroyer broke formation, targeting what their sensors indicated was the most vulnerable human vessel. On her command deck, Captain Santos watched the approaching threat with cold calculation. 20 years in Earth's special forces had taught her to recognize opportunity in overwhelming odds. "Execute Thermopylae maneuver," she ordered. Her 17 vessels moved with reckless precision into a formation no Concordat tactical simulator would ever suggest, deliberately creating a navigational funnel that invited the enemy to advance while exposing their flanks. The Vexnar commander, confident in superior firepower, committed fully to the engagement. In the Concordat flagship's observation deck, Zarvex watched in horrified fascination as human vessels executed maneuvers that violated safety protocols. Their ships skimmed so close to each other that radiation shields overlapped, creating localized distortion fields. As the Vexnar destroyer entered the kill zone, human vessels fired simultaneously, not at the enemy's weapons or propulsion systems, but at specific harmonic points in their shield matrix. The hybrid weapons, human nuclear warheads encased in scavenged Concordat phase technology, exploited a fundamental vulnerability no Concordat engineer would have considered: the crystalline resonance frequency of Vexnar hull material. The destroyer shattered like glass. Santa's vessel took a devastating hit during the engagement, atmosphere venting from her port section. Emergency bulkheads failed to deploy. Yet instead of withdrawing, she maintained position, coordinating the remaining fleet while her own ship burned around her. Unable to comprehend this behavior, Zarvex opened an emergency channel. "Captain Santos, your vessel is critically damaged. Why sacrifice yourself when retreat is tactically sound?" The image that appeared on his screen showed Santos bleeding from a head wound, manually sealing a pressure breach with materials that would never pass Concordat safety inspections. "Because that's what humans do," she replied. voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. "We hold the line so others can live." As Vexnar reinforcements broke off their attack on Concordat positions to deal with this unexpected threat, Zarvex's analysis crystals processed a disturbing realization. The Concordat had evolved beyond warfare through millennia of peace, considering it intellectually beneath them. But humans understood conflict at a visceral level. They didn't just adapt technology. They adapted to violence in ways that made them uniquely dangerous. And most disturbing of all, they channeled that danger in service of protecting others, with no regard for their own survival. For the first time in recorded history, the Vexnar offensive faltered, and as the skirmish ended with their retreat, the Concordat Council faced an uncomfortable question. Were humans primitive savages to be studied, or the salvation they had never known they needed? The Overseer Council Chamber, a vast crystalline dome, unchanged for 12 millennia, had never witnessed such disorder. The 7-tiered hierarchy of speaking positions, meticulously designed to maintain proper civilizational rankings, dissolved into chaos as Admiral Sarah Chen strode uninvited across the ceremonial floor. Gone was the deferential diplomat. In her place stood a military commander in a crisp uniform adorned with insignia no Concordat cultural database could identify. "Earth demands full membership and war council seats," she announced, her voice cutting through the multilingual protests. With a gesture, she activated the chamber's holographic display, projecting combat footage of the Vexnar engagement. The Prime Overseer's energy field pulsed with indignation, sending ripples through the chamber's atmosphere. "Ambassador Chen." "Admiral Chen," she corrected. "United Earth Defense Force." "This pretense is beneath dignity," the Overseer continued. 10,000 years of tradition cannot be overturned for primitives who got lucky. Your species remains under protectorate status, regardless of your unexpected tactical success. Chen's smile never reached her eyes. "We anticipated your response." At precisely that moment, the Concordat's secure communication network collapsed. Every terminal in the chamber flickered, then displayed Earth's planetary emblem. "What have you done?" demanded the technology overseer, his crystalline form vibrating with alarm. "Demonstrated our qualifications," Chen replied. "Your unhackable systems were penetrated within 3 days of first contact. We've had access to your complete communication network for 6 months." The implications rippled through the chamber like a gravitational wave. If humans had accessed the communication channels, what else might they have infiltrated? Defense systems, research databases. As the council erupted into accusations, Zarvex watched with growing unease. His anthropological training had never prepared him for this level of cultural upheaval. Later that evening, he received a priority summons to an auxiliary diplomatic chamber. There, he found the reptilian Star ambassador engaged in hushed conversation with Admiral Chen. "Our species has observed Overseer decline for centuries," this Star was saying. "The Concordat no longer serves its member worlds. We propose a separate alliance with Earth, the first bilateral agreement outside Concordat protocols in 7,000 years. Zarvex froze in the entryway. Such an arrangement was more than unprecedented. It was heretical. "Zarvex," Chen acknowledged without turning. "Your timing is perfect. The overseers have selected you as mediator for tomorrow's emergency session due to your human expertise." His sensory apparatus detected a subtle shift in ambient ionic charges, the biological indicator of human amusement. "How did you know about my assignment?" he asked, processor cores cycling through possibilities. The information had been classified at the highest levels. Chen activated her datapad, displaying his complete research file, including private notes he'd never shared. "Your encryption was elegant," she explained with a predatory smile, "but Earth children break similar codes as puzzles." The revelation left him momentarily stunned. His most sophisticated security protocols evaded with apparent ease. That night, unable to enter regular regeneration cycles, Zarvex accessed the Overseer Central Database using his emergency clearance. What he discovered shattered his remaining faith in Concordat leadership. The Overseers had authorized a planetary sterilization protocol for Earth, a multilayered biological agent designed to eliminate the human contagion, while preserving the planet's biosphere for future colonization. Implementation was scheduled for 3 standard cycles from now. For the first time in his 300-year existence, Zarvex faced a moral dilemma no cultural programming had prepared him for. His species had never known betrayal, had never needed to choose between duty and justice. With trembling appendages, he downloaded the classified files onto a portable memory crystal. The action registered in his consciousness as fundamentally wrong, the first true crime in his people's history. Yet, as he encrypted the data for transmission to Earth's diplomatic quarters, he experienced something entirely new, the certainty that violating his most sacred oaths was, paradoxically, the only right action. Tomorrow, he would commit treason against a civilization that had existed for 30,000 years. And somewhere in his analytical matrices, a very human emotion was taking root. Hope that something better might rise from the ashes of that betrayal. Information wants to be free. The ancient human phrase, displayed in 17 different languages, floated above Dr. Eleanor Chen as she unveiled the Nexus at the Interspecies Scientific Symposium. The holographic interface pulsed with data streams from 100 worlds, its architecture unlike anything in Concordat design philosophy. For millennia, the Concordat has controlled knowledge distribution. Eleanor explained to the assembled representatives. Species advancement is regulated through carefully timed technological revelations. The Nexus offers an alternative, instant translation and democratized access to scientific data across species barriers. The Concordat officials present reacted with visible horror. The technology overseer's crystalline form vibrated at a frequency that cracked nearby servingware. This violates the fundamental principle of guided progression. Species must develop at appropriate rates. In stark contrast, the Eridani scientists in attendance leaned forward, their compound eyes reflecting the dancing data streams. These insectoid beings, brilliant but eternally restricted by Concordat advancement protocols, had developed parallel mathematics to humans despite using an entirely different numerical base. You propose intellectual anarchy, the overseer continued, energy field flickering with distress. We propose collaboration, Eleanor corrected. The combined scientific output of 17 species, freely shared, would advance everyone's understanding exponentially. Despite the overseer's immediate ban on Nexus technology, illegal terminals appeared in Eridani hive cities within weeks. The technology spread through underground networks with impossible speed, transmitted by scientists tired of waiting centuries for permission to explore concepts they had already theorized. 3 months after the Nexus introduction, the first unauthorized breakthrough occurred. An Eridani biochemist synthesized a neural regeneration compound using principles derived from human medical research combined with SCAR cellular biology. The compound restored mobility to paralyzed victims of a mining accident, a development the Overseer advancement schedule had placed 2 centuries in the future. Zarvex watched the escalating situation with growing alarm. The Concordat enforcement squads dispatched to confiscate Nexus terminals were met with unprecedented resistance. His research recording devices captured footage of Eridani workers physically shielding human engineers from Concordat security forces. They're willing to risk injury to protect aliens, he noted in his private journal. This defies all established xenosocial principles. Deep in the secure research section of the Overseer vessel, Zarvex discovered something far more disturbing. Development specifications for a targeted biological agent designed to attack Earth's specific genetic markers. The virus would leave Earth's biosphere intact while eliminating its dominant species, a regrettable necessity according to the attached documentation. That evening, at the prestigious Galactic Heritage Ceremony, an event broadcast to all Concordat worlds, Zarvex made his decision. As the Prime Overseer prepared to deliver the traditional address on civilizational stability, Zarvex approached the transmission podium. With a gesture that would echo across thousands of worlds, he connected his species' complete historical archive, 30,000 years of uninterrupted record-keeping, to the Nexus. The repository contained not just scientific data, but cultural records, philosophical debates, and most damning of all, the complete uncensored history of Concordat expansion. Knowledge is not meant to be hoarded, he declared, using the human phrase that would become the revolution's rallying cry. It must flow freely for the benefit of all sentient beings. The broadcast reached 97% of Concordat worlds before the overseers managed to terminate the transmission. But the ideological contamination had already spread beyond containment. The historical archives revealed uncomfortable truths about the Concordat's formation, how the now crystalline overseers had once been organic beings who had used technological superiority to subjugate other species, positioning themselves as benevolent guides while ensuring their permanent dominance. As Zarvex was taken into custody, his final glimpse of the ceremony hall showed Eleanor Chen downloading the complete archives onto a human storage device. Their eyes met briefly across the chaos. She nodded once. A simple human gesture he now understood meant both acknowledgement and promise. In his detention cell, Zarvex experienced something his species had engineered out of their collective consciousness generations ago: satisfaction in rebellion. The knowledge revolution had begun, and for the first time in recorded history, the future of the galaxy was genuinely unpredictable. For a species that had valued stability above all else, this uncertainty should have been terrifying. Instead, Zarvex found himself calculating the exponential possibilities of 17 species innovating without restriction, and discovering that he welcomed the chaos that would follow. The Vexenar main fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm front, 10,000 cutting-edge warships arranged in their distinctive blade formation. Their hulls, once purely crystalline, now incorporated organic components that pulsed with bioluminescent energy, evidence of their evolution during centuries of isolation. As the first wave tore through the Concordat's border systems, the Overseer Council remained paralyzed by procedure, still debating the proper diplomatic response protocols even as 3 core worlds fell within days. The defense fleet will stabilize the situation, the military overseer insisted, projecting confidence despite tactical displays, showing Concordat formations disintegrating under focused particle beams. The ceremonial fleet, beautiful but functionally obsolete, followed battle protocols unchanged for millennia against an enemy that had spent those same centuries adapting. Each transmission from the front reported commanders dying as they executed textbook maneuvers against weapons that had never existed in their tactical databases. In desperation, the Prime Overseer authorized an unprecedented communication. Admiral Chen, we formally request Earth's intervention in the Vexenar conflict. The response came not as words, but as action. Within hours, the Earth Defense Fleet revealed its true extent. Military installations and shipyards concealed throughout the solar system, far beyond what the Concordat's cursory surveys had detected. Vessels of hybrid design emerged from hidden asteroid bases and subsurface lunar facilities, their configurations violating Concordat engineering principles in ways that somehow made them more effective rather than less. Captain Santos, her previous vessel lost in the initial skirmish, now commanded the EDF Defiant, a destroyer incorporating salvaged Concordat technology with human innovations never documented in any database. As she led the first counteroffensive at Ta City, Concordat observers watched in horror as human vessels executed maneuvers their safety systems would have prevented. Deliberate collisions with debris fields to alter trajectory, atmospheric skimming that stressed hull integrity to dangerous levels, and worst of all, willingly taking damage to create offensive opportunities. "They're insane," whispered a Concordat tactical officer as a human cruiser deliberately positioned itself between a Vexenar dreadnought and a hospital ship carrying thousands of wounded aliens. The cruiser's shields collapsed under the barrage, hull plates shearing away into space. Yet it maintained position, returning fire from secondary weapon systems, even as its primary reactors went critical. In the field hospital established on Proxima Centauri II, Zarvex, released from detention to assist with the crisis, found himself coordinating triage operations alongside human medical personnel. To his astonishment, human physicians were administering emergency blood transfusions to compatible alien species despite their own wounded needing the same resources. "Your hemoglobin variants are close enough to scar blood chemistry," explained a human doctor, her own arm bearing a pressure bandage. "We can synthesize more for our people later." In the command center, Admiral Chen orchestrated the defense with cold efficiency, her holographic displays tracking both military engagements and civilian evacuations with equal priority. Battle groups formed and dissolved in patterns no Concordat strategist would have conceived, seemingly chaotic until observers recognized how each unpredictable movement forced Vexnar commanders to divide their attention across multiple vectors. "How do you balance such contradictions?" Zarvex asked her during a rare moment of calm. "Your species fights with unmatched ferocity, yet expends resources to save even non-humans." Chen's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display, but her response carried weight beyond simple words. "We fight like demons precisely because we care so deeply. Compassion without strength is merely sentiment." The tide of battle shifted when Admiral Chen unveiled Project Chimera, Concordat vessels retrofitted with technologies the overseers had restricted for millennia, now deployed by mixed crews who embraced humanity's warrior ethos while leveraging alien technical expertise. The sight of Eridani tactical officers working alongside human pilots, Scar engineers maintaining hybrid drive systems, and even a handful of Zarvex's own people operating weapons platforms their species had forsworn. This vision of cooperative defense represented something entirely new in galactic history. As the Vexnar advance faltered for the first time in the campaign, their distributed consciousness struggled to process a fundamental tactical problem. They had evolved to counter the predictable, protocol-driven Concordat. Against humans, biological entities willing to sacrifice themselves, while improvising solutions that violated every established principle, their adaptive advantages proved insufficient. Aboard his flagship, the Vexnar Prime Consciousness experienced the silicon equivalent of doubt. Victory had seemed mathematically certain against the stagnant Concordat. But these humans introduced something the crystalline entities had never encountered in 12,000 years of evolution: unpredictability with purpose. And as Project Chimera vessels executed their first coordinated assault on Vexnar supply lines, the balance of the war shifted in ways no simulation could have predicted. While the Vexnar offensive was contained at the Sirius blockade, a more profound battle ignited within Concordat society. The transmission began simultaneously on 12-member worlds, species representatives standing shoulder to shoulder with human advisors, each delivering identical declarations in their native tongues. "The Overseer mandate has ended. We demand self-determination." Centuries of carefully managed stability collapsed in hours. The Eridani hive worlds, their populations linked through the Nexus, organized mass demonstrations with precision that shocked Concordat authorities. The aquatic Merketh, renowned for their contemplative philosophy, blockaded Overseer facilities with living chains of bodies. Most shocking of all, a faction of Zarvex's own people, the crystalline beings who had maintained the Concordat for millennia, publicly questioned their species' right to determine the fate of others. The telepathic consensus that had guided Overseer policy fragmented under unprecedented internal dissent. For the first time in recorded history, individual Overseers began expressing divergent opinions. "The humans have infected our very consciousness," the Prime Overseer declared in emergency session. "This contagion must be excised before collapse becomes irreversible." The decision was unanimous among the remaining loyal Overseers. Earth would be severed from all Concordat systems. Massive disruptor arrays, secretly positioned around Earth's solar system during first contact, powered up to create an impenetrable isolation field. The technology, forbidden by Concordat treaties, had been developed as a last resort containment measure for existential threats. In the primary control chamber, the technology overseer initiated the activation sequence. Isolation field generation in 3, 2. The countdown froze at 1 second. Every array simultaneously went dark, revealing human counter-systems that had been in place since first contact. Devices so well camouflaged they had registered as part of the original Concordat technology during all system diagnostics. Across Concordat space, the Nexus broadcast a transmission intercepted hours earlier, a private communication between the Prime Overseer and a Vexnar emissary. The crystalline entity was unmistakably promising Earth territory to the silicon-based creatures in exchange for preserving Overseer dominance. The humans will be contained. The Prime Overseer's distinctive energy signature pulsed in the recording. Their worlds will be open for Vexnar settlement once sterilization is complete. The betrayal's magnitude sent shockwaves through species that had trusted Overseer guidance for millennia. Mass protests engulfed Concordat administrative centers as citizens realized their leaders had negotiated with an enemy responsible for billions of deaths. Zarvex, his form bearing crystalline fractures from combat alongside humans, entered the first galaxy-wide democratic assembly ever convened. Representatives from all 17 Concordat species plus Earth gathered in a hastily converted hangar bay aboard the human flagship Prometheus. "I have learned from humans," he began, his voice transmission reaching every connected world. "That true advancement comes not from stability, but from challenge. Not from homogeneity, but from diversity of thought." As he spoke, Admiral Chen presented evidence that the recent Vexnar evolution had been deliberately engineered by a splinter faction of Overseers, an attempt to create a controlled crisis that would reinforce Concordat dependence on Overseer protection. The plan had backfired catastrophically when the Vexnar exceeded their creator's expectations. In a ceremony that combined traditions from all 18 species, the Overseer Council chambers were symbolically dissolved. Each representative added an element from their world to a communal repository: water from Earth's oceans, crystalline fragments from the Overseer homeworld, bioluminescent spores from Eridani hives. The final act of revolution came when Eleanor Chen, working with scientists from 7 species, unlocked the Overseer's private database. Technologies suppressed for millennia flooded the Nexus: medical treatments capable of regenerating entire organs, energy systems that required no resource consumption, transportation methods that rendered traditional spacecraft obsolete. "They kept these from us," an Eridani scientist whispered, compound eyes reflecting scrolling data, "to maintain our dependence." As the technological renaissance spread, daily life transformed across thousands of worlds practically overnight. Diseases considered incurable vanished under targeted nanotherapy. Energy shortages that had plagued frontier planets disappeared with the implementation of vacuum extraction techniques. In his personal quarters, Zarvex contemplated the fragments in his crystalline structure, battle scars that would never fully heal. Unlike his ancestors, who had replaced damaged portions to maintain perfect symmetry, he had refused reconstructive treatment. The imperfections reminded him of humanity's most important lesson: that growth and evolution emerged not from perfection, but from adaptation to challenge. That wisdom, more than any technology or tactical advantage, represented humanity's true gift to a galaxy that had forgotten how to change. As reports arrived of Vexnar forces regrouping for another offensive, Zarvex felt something his species had engineered out of their consciousness millennia ago: anticipation of an uncertain future. And for the first time, that uncertainty felt not like chaos to be feared, but like possibility to be embraced. 5 years after first contact, Zarvex stood aboard humanity's Reach, the most advanced exploration vessel ever constructed, gazing at a holographic representation of the transformed galaxy. Once separate regions of Concordat space, now pulsed with interconnected trade routes and communication channels, a vibrant network where previously there had been only carefully regulated pathways. The Vexenar War had ended not with the anticipated genocide, but with Admiral Chen's audacious diplomatic gambit. After pushing the silicon-based entities back to their core systems, she had offered negotiation instead of annihilation. "We studied your biology," she had told the confused Vexenar Prime consciousness. "Your aggression stemmed from resource scarcity, specifically the rare silicon compounds your species requires for reproduction." The peace treaty that followed addressed the root cause of the conflict. In exchange for technological assistance developing synthetic alternatives to natural silicon matrices, the former enemies now patrolled the galactic rim alongside previous adversaries, their crystalline ships distinguishable from Concordat vessels only by subtle variations in configuration. The Concordat itself had been reborn as the Galactic Alliance, its headquarters constructed in Earth's orbit. A ring-shaped station incorporating architectural elements from all member species. The symbolism was deliberate. Humanity had become the literal and figurative center of the new interstellar community. On Proxima Centauri IV, the last overseer monastery hosted a gathering that would have been unimaginable years earlier. Former enemies from 17 species engaged in philosophical discourse, their differences celebrated rather than suppressed. The Overseer Prime, one of the few who had embraced change rather than resisting it, addressed the assembly with surprising humility. "We fail to recognize that true advancement comes through challenge, not comfort," it acknowledged, crystalline form vibrating at frequencies that conveyed genuine regret. "In seeking to protect civilization from disruption, we prevented its natural evolution." Eleanor Chen's Nexus had evolved beyond a mere information-sharing platform into a multi-species consciousness network. Volunteers could temporarily experience life through alien perspectives via neural interface technology, fostering unprecedented empathy across biological barriers. The innovation had reduced interspecies conflicts by 70% in 3 years. Captain Santos, her body now partly cybernetic from war injuries, led the Alliance Defense Force with officers from 23 species. The hybrid command structure combined human tactical flexibility with the diverse biological advantages of multiple evolutionary paths, Eridani multifaceted perception, Shkar infrared sensitivity, and even Vexenar quantum calculation abilities. As the humanities reach prepared for its maiden voyage beyond known space, Zarvex, now Earth's ambassador to the Alliance Council, found himself reflecting on the irony of his initial assessment. His first journal entry, preserved in the Galactic Museum as a historical artifact, displayed alongside his final report. Humanity's greatest strength was never their technology or adaptability, but their empathy coupled with defiance. They cared deeply enough to protect others, yet refused limitations placed upon them by anyone, including the universe itself. Admiral Chen joined him at the observation window, her uniform now bearing the insignia of both Earth and the Alliance. Having second thoughts about joining the expedition, she asked, noting his contemplative posture. "Quite the opposite," Zarvex replied. "I was calculating the exponential possibilities of what we might discover with 23 species perceiving reality through different sensory apparatuses." Chen smiled, "and working together rather than hoarding their insights." "Precisely." His crystalline form shimmered with what humans now recognized as excitement. 5 years ago, I believed I was studying humanity. I never anticipated becoming your student." The ship's quantum engines engage, creating ripples in space-time that previous Concordat physics had declared impossible. The vessel slipped between dimensional barriers using principles discovered by an Eridani mathematician building on human theoretical models, accelerating toward regions no sentient being had ever mapped. Behind them, a galaxy forever altered by human potential continued its own remarkable evolution. The knowledge revolution had sparked cultural renaissances across dozens of worlds. Species that had maintained rigid castes for millennia now experimented with human concepts like democratic governance and social mobility. Even the transformed Vexenar had begun producing art, crystalline sculptures that captured the quantum state of emotions their silicon consciousness had only recently learned to process. In the Alliance Academy on Mars, young beings from 37 species studied together, their different physiologies, and fought patterns, creating educational challenges that produced unprecedented innovation. The curriculum centered on humanity's most contagious export, possibility thinking. As humanity's reach vanished into the unknown, a message transmitted across all Alliance frequencies, automatically translated into each species' native communication form. We journey not to conquer but to connect, not to impose but to understand. We carry with us the combined wisdom of 23 evolutionary paths, each with its own unique perspective on the universe. Together, we will find wonders none of us could have discovered alone. The message was signed not with individual names, but with a simple phrase that captured the transformed galaxy's new ethos: united in diversity. And as countless beings throughout Alliance space received the transmission, they recognized the unmistakably human sentiment behind the carefully diplomatic words. The stubborn refusal to accept that any barrier, even the fundamental laws of reality as currently understood, represented an absolute limitation rather than simply the next challenge to overcome. The arrogance of presumed superiority had faded across the galaxy. In its place grew something far more powerful: the humility to learn from others combined with the courage to reimagine what was possible.